Welcome to Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC, graciously sponsored by our friends over at the Alliance Defending Freedom. And speaking of the importance of freedom, let's not beat around the bush. Let's get right into the news. The United States is in the middle of another series of strikes on Iran. So yesterday, there was a series of strikes that began. After 4 p.m. yesterday, the Treasury Department announced all of those sanctions are back in place. And then the Navy and the Air Force started doing a little bit of landscaping on Qeshm Island near Sirik, Bandar Abbas, which is a port city along the Strait of Hormuz. Things started getting a little bit interesting. And then the United States ended its series of strikes. And you didn't hear this, maybe there'll be strikes tomorrow and maybe not. You didn't hear any of that. Instead, what we got today was the president giving a press conference in which he sounded about at the end of his patience. And when I say about at the end of his patience, I mean a few minutes later after the president started saying things like, I'm tired of their crap and there's no deal. No, we're not negotiating anymore. No memorandums of understanding, no love and hugs delegation, no George W. Bush style nonsense. Instead, we're doing explosions reported in several Iranian cities, but this time not along the Strait of Hormuz. This is not just reshaping the beachfront property. No, we started getting reports of a series of explosions in Sirik, Bandar Abbas, as well as in Kharg and a couple of other major cities. Now, these cities, as you get further in, we start to see a lot of the infrastructure targeted be the Iranian or the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps structures, like this beautiful explosion you might see on your screen now. So that is Shahak in the Bushehr province, which is currently rather on fire. There is a report from one official from the United States over to CNN saying, quote, the ceasefire is over, at least for now. Lots of explosions. No, this is not Detroit on the 4th of July. Lots of explosions, lots of munitions that are flying. So what is actually going on? Well, first of all, let me give you a clearer picture of what we understand. Here inside Iran right now, there are multiple cities all over the place that have been hit at this point, all up and down the coast to the Strait of Hormuz, as well as a couple of cities about 100 to 200 miles inside of southern Iran. And a lot of this infrastructure that has been targeted, at least according to the statement by U.S. CENTCOM this afternoon, says, quote, at the direction of the commander-in-chief, U.S. Central Command forces have started conducting additional strikes against Iran to further degrade their ability to threaten freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz. The United States is holding Iran accountable for recent unjustified aggression against commercial shipping. There were 3 ships we covered yesterday which were hit by the Iranians, and civilian crews freely navigating a vital international waterway. Also, there were a series of attacks against Bahrain, which the Bahrainians appeared to be rather annoyed with, because according to other intelligence sources, as well as some Middle Eastern news sources, the Bahrainians, as well as possibly the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, also joined the United States in these strikes currently ongoing. And these are some very, very light 'em up style in the sky approaches. Now, at least right now, we are aware of not only a couple of IRGC headquarters which are being targeted, but also a major airport. One Iranian source originally confirmed that one of the most eastern airports in the country, Iran Shahar, was devastated pretty badly, at least. I guess the tarmac and the concrete is completely shredded. That is one of the places suspected of launching some of the Iranian Shahed suicide drones. Now, this brings us to the foreign series of statements, because Qatar and Pakistan, who are supposed to be the brokers of conversation between the United States and the Iranian parliamentary leadership, which is at this time, we understand, still disconnected from the IRGC itself. We didn't actually get to play this clip yesterday, but there were a lot of jeering calls in the streets from Iranian Revolutionary Guard sources to Foreign Minister Arachi for even engaging in any kind of negotiation whatsoever with the United States. And the ones doing the chanting are the ones holding the gun, which means it's the IRGC. So they're chanting honorless, honorless in Farsi. So an interesting time over in Iran for sure. Now, the other countries are getting out their tut-tutting. So Qatar's statement is slightly more strong. I guess if you could say a strongly worded statement carries any kind of weight to it. The state of Qatar, quote, strongly condemns the repeated Iranian attacks on the Fraternal Kingdom of Bahrain and the state of Kuwait, considering them a blatant violation of the sovereignty of two countries and a flagrant breach of the, you guessed it, rules of international law. Yeah, exciting stuff. Now, again, strongly worded letters are at least better than whatever Pakistan, otherwise known as Winnie the Pooh of China's hand puppet, had to say. So Pakistan released its statement, which is Pakistan expresses deep concern. Aww. Yeah, deep concern at the escalation in tensions in the region. This is like a mother-in-law trying to fix her kid and kid-in-law's marriage. This is like very like, well, it's just very tense and I'm just not sure. There's a lot of emotions than words flying around. So as usual, Pakistan, which is currently having its own border disputes with Afghanistan and the ethnic groups that Iran no longer has control over in its eastern regions, because, you know, the Middle East and moving into Asia is such a wonderful and magical place of ethnic harmony. Pakistan's, again, not exactly delivering a lot of exciting things to the region. Pakistan also refused to recall some of its troops and air squadrons, as well as 2 units. They don't measure military units in the same way that Western countries do. So these are smaller, almost 2 platoon-sized groups of mechanics from Saudi Arabia, where they still are stationing several groups. Now, according to Iranian state and collaborative media, so take this part with a grain of salt, Iran is now suggesting that their missile and drone attacks have started on a wide range of targets related to the U.S. and Israeli regime in the region. Now, do we actually have reports so far of the Iranians successfully launching drones or missiles at the moment? No. There are no reported instances of launches along any kind of missile batteries, any of the kind of observation crews. We do know at this point that Iraq is not giving any additional resources to the Iranian state-backed militias operating in Iraq. Also, the Kurds are taking over more and more and more of eastern Iraq. So it's a very different dynamic there on the western border of Iran into the mountain regions. Now, there's a lot of speculation and a lot of rumors. There's no better way to tell you guys this. There's just a lot of rumors floating around about whether the Kurds are doing anything or not in western Iran. I have no confirmed details of this yet, but I have listened to those from Appalachia tell me about seeing things in them hills for a long time. And until the mountains start speaking Kurdish, until the mountains start actually, you know, flowing with the Kurds into, you know, down from the mountains into western Iran proper, I'm going to kind of keep that one with a grain of salt. So as for all of the Middle Eastern kind of on-point reporting, I don't think so. Now, the president has released a statement as of 7:02 p.m., so 13 minutes ago on July 8th, said, quote, "We just hit them very hard. We hit them 20-1. And every time they hit us, we are going to hit them 20. We did it last night, and we did a little something today." Now, the president of the United States is no longer in Turkey. He's not. He has left the Ankara summit for NATO, threatening Spain. We're going to get into that in a couple of minutes. Radio crew, we're going to send you over to the commercial here on the live stream where there are no commercial breaks. There's just dreams and happy sunshine. Instead, we're going to cover some of these statements by the president and a crying reporter from Denmark, because, of course, it's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, boys, girls, and squirrels. So one of the reporters says, "Mr. President, what changed with Iran? You said everything would be fine. We'd have memorandums of understanding. J.D. Vance said they've turned a new leaf. What happened, Mr. President? Here's his answer.
What changed, and do you think that
I got to know him, so...
I got to know him. The Ayatollahs, the mullahs, the parliament of Iran. It turns out, breaking news. Breaking news. The Iranian leadership, the regime, those who are fundamentalist Shia clerics, the ones who massacred 40,000 people, breaking, they're not very trustworthy. Wow. I know. I too am shocked and surprised. Amazing, indeed. Anyway, the president.
I've said that about a lot. Now, when you say rational, I think they're much more rational than level 1, level 2. Level 1 is gone, level 2 is gone. This is level 3.
So he's saying, we got rid of Ayatollah al-Khamenei. No one has seen Muqtada, his gay one-legged son, at this point. We are currently looking at Foreign Minister Arachi getting mocked and jeered by the IRGC in his own streets. The IRGC, there are now 2, maybe 3 different factions of the IRGC along the coast. And these are not the girls on the beach that the Beach Boys were singing of. These particular Islamists on the beach are not just doing whatever the parliament says. So now you have not just Foreign Minister Arachi, but you have Ghalibaf, who can't even bluff and say, well, maybe we'll just charge tolls. Because the IRGC faction closest to the Strait of Hormuz is not only firing on United States allied countries, they're firing on Qatari shipping vessels. This appears to be the same IRGC crew that fired upon China. Now, I don't know how to tell you this, guys, but that's not a very good idea.
I think they are more rational, but based on their actions over the last week or two, they're not doing a service to the people. And I think more than anything else is I got to know them.
Now, to move it along here, because I don't want to kind of lay lax here, the president did essentially then throw out the insult. You can hear the man's patience leaving. I don't like to do a lot of tea reading and kind of deep psychological. Well, you can hear in his voice that. Listen to this man and hear how he is tired of messing with this. Trump gets tired of things. You've seen this before. It's not new. Man's been the exact same guy 40, 50, 60 years in dealing with these things in front of the media. Here you go.
So when you say not a success, it's a tremendous success. The fake news likes to say how well they're doing. They're doing terribly. They have 350% inflation. When the war started, they had like 6%, 5%. They want to make a deal, but they don't know how to make a deal. And then they go around shooting ships at night. I don't like that. They're dealing with very fine people. They're dealing with Steve Witkoff. They're dealing with Jared Kushner and J.D. Vance. And
the reason that he mentions those 3 individuals is because those 3, Jared Kushner, who has a lot of investments in the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who believes that he can broker a deal with anyone if he's nice enough, and J.D. Vance, who has foreign policy views that are rather isolationist and strangely George Bushian in the idea that, well, they told us nice things, and so, well, maybe they're rational and agreeable. No. I'm sorry, but the Pope's inner ideas that well, if we're all just friendly, some people can be reformed and changed, and it's going to be very magical and amazing. That doesn't work. That's not a thing. There are people out there whose cultures will encourage them to lie to you and steal from you and kill you. Why? Because they believe that is necessary and their Allah-given right. And if you're a moderate Muslim, if you're like a Sunni, for instance, or you're a Christian or a Jew or a Sikh, or you're a Druze, then they will do what is necessary to remove you from the picture and hang you from whatever crane is necessary. Now, the president of the United States here is, look, all right, the negotiated, the MOU team, the Nikki Haley kind of nation build it out, maybe we give you guys money to open up the Strait team, that did absolutely nothing. So now it's time to let Sekwar and Rubio cook.
Dealing with Marco and Scott, they're dealing with great people, but I don't know. I think they're a little loco, they're a little crazy. But they told us they'd like to go to the funeral of a person who was killed a lot of people. Khomeini killed a lot of people over the years, and there for a long time. Don't forget what we did.
Welcome to our radio crew coming back from the commercial break here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. So the president of the United States is saying, look, we did the funeral, we let him have a little bit of time, a mourning here. They wanted to keep this up. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth says, Mr. President, my man, my dude, my pal, if you want us to do a little something here and you want us to finish this, we can do that. It's at your discretion.
Tell them about last night.
Yes, sir. Last night, as you said, about a small craft that they were trying to harass shipping with. So that was a big part of what we targeted. Underground facilities where they were storing drones or missiles, coastal defense sites, radar sites, surveillance sites, anything used to harass shipping in the Strait of Hormuz. So
now, it should be said, for the record and for clarity, I want to make this very clear, that in this particular instance, if the United States would not have done the ceasefire goofy goober time where we're sort of cease, but we're not really ceasefiring, if we wouldn't have done that, and especially if we wouldn't have done the MOU patty cake surprise, then we would be way further along than we are now. When you stop, you allow people to regroup. And the Iranians did. They were able to move some things forward and set up new surface-to-air missile sites. That's a problem. Now that's being taken care of again.
anything they thought they had rebuilt or capability they were using was a target last night. And tonight, if we need to, on your order, Mr. President, we will hit even more and even deeper, because that's the consequence.
And we may put down the blockade. We may put it back, the blockade. And it'll only be a blockade for Iran. Anybody else can have whatever they want.
Blockade them. The president also threatened to take Kharg Island. The man's reaching the end of his patience for two reasons. Number one, because Trump doesn't like it when things are not going his way. He gets annoyed, he gets pissed. You're the president. We saw this in Barack Obama. We saw this with Joe Biden. We even saw George Bush with this a little bit. To the point where, I mean, he would make a case and say, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. Now watch this drive, and like end the media interview and go back to golfing. There are presidents in our American history who get really tired of dealing with nonsense. They do. It's been a long sticking point with the presidential administrations throughout our history. Number two, the president really doesn't like being promised things that don't come to fruition. Now that has to do with a lot of the immigration situation in our country, and there's a lot else to dive into here in just a little bit. Now there are a couple of other details here, again, as we're kind of keeping an eye on the situation as it's developing. According to Al Jazeera, the Iranian foreign minister Arachi, again, the guy who has been heckled by the IRGC in Iran, has now said, we do not answer vulgarity with vulgarity, but with action. Yeah, okay. That's real special. Thanks for sharing. Because I guess President Trump called Iran's leaders scum. Correct. No lies detected. And again, the president also made it very clear, the Space Force has cameras that can see exactly who's going around nuclear material. We know what it is that you're doing, even during the ceasefire moments.
Have that now. There's no way they have a nuclear weapon. We have cameras, as an example, on the site that those beautiful B-2s at 1 o'clock in the morning 10 months ago blew up. They blew it up. We have cameras, that's called Space Force, if they're in space. But we have cameras that can read the badge of the person going over to a site. Mohammed something. We say it's Mohammed something is there with shovels. Well, shovels won't get you there. The biggest machinery in the world probably won't get you there if you want.
Now, again, you can see who is behind the president of the United States. I'm not trying to dive into the psychology of, well, this person is here, there. The guys that are now in charge of the situation are Rubio and Hegseth. And again, we don't know if Rubio can actually effectuate some changes here. If Hegseth, the Secretary of War, can effectuate some changes here, excellent. We've tried one way. Now we're going to try the other way. So we'll have to keep an eye. Now, that's not the only amount of pressure that's being put on the situation. We're also keeping an eye on what's going on with Spain. But before President Trump finished up with some of the NATO things, I should mention where he is right now, given the military situation. I said it was very unlikely Trump was going to stick around in Turkey as these strikes continued. Not a safe place for the president of the United States to be. Now, of note, President Trump did not take the brand new Qatari-donated Air Force One out of Turkey. That Air Force One flew to outside of in Suffolk, England, RAF Mildenhall, and landed there and kind of showed off to some of the Brits and then again some of the U.S. troops that are over in that part of England, the new Air Force One. And then President Trump's original Air Force One ended up meeting up with him there. Now, if you want to read into the tea leaves and say maybe there was a bit of nervousness as to whether something in the Qatari Air Force One would allow them to be tracked or perhaps fired upon by an element inside Turkey or from the greater Middle East, I don't know, and I'm not going to speculate further there. But I wanted to make it clear that the president is now out of the region. And then number two, he did not take the Qatari-donated Air Force One in order to get to England. Now, that brings us over to a little bit of Spain. Why is Spain in significantly hot water right now with NATO? Well, because they've been the worst member of NATO, maybe other than Turkey. The Spanish have, for some time, been the most unreliable, both on the financial and the security factor, the most unreliable partner in all of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, even more so than Sweden. Now, getting into this, there's a lot of very weird media coverage out of the NATO conference in Ankara. And for some good reason, there's one reporter that just starts sobbing about Mark Rutte allowing President Trump to insult Spain, which is weird. What's going on? So President Trump does not like that the Prime Minister of Spain is pretty worthless. Fair, very fairly so. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is a far leftist and doesn't believe that Spain should be spending anything at all in regard to NATO, but also says that the United States and that the UK and France and Germany and Poland, etc., should all be footing Spain's defense bill so that they can spend money and have a generally garbage government. And this is not very popular in the United States. And so as the rest of NATO has been shipping in more of their gross domestic product per capita, they've increased their spending percentage year over year, so that instead of everyone paying 2%, everyone's paying 5% and 6%. If you're a poorer country, you're not spending as much as a richer country like Germany, for instance, but you're still paying 5% or 6% of this, so you're footing your membership dues here. It's a flat tax rate, in other words. Spain doesn't want to do this because, again, the Spanish government under their prime minister is garbage. So the president said, look, Spain's a wasted cause. Maybe the U.S. doesn't trade with Spain. Maybe we do a little economic embargo.
And I want to thank Mark. He's been a great Secretary General of NATO. I'm not happy with NATO because of what they did with Greenland. And I'm not happy with NATO because of the fact that they didn't want to help us with the number one state sponsor of terror. That's Iran.
Again, Spain made it very clear that they were going to side against NATO. Now, here's the fun thing, boys and girls. Alliances go both ways. NATO was not supposed to just be the United States giving oodles, canoodles, and toaster strudels of foreign aid to everyone out there just so that they could consistently call us the worst country ever and super evil and imperialist and slavers and the herders of women and mean to migrants and all of this other nonsense. These countries that can't even, build air conditioning or the devices to power them. And the president's made it very clear, if you're not going to align with us on foreign policy, why would we accept that you get membership into the premier foreign policy alliance of the United States? I see in some of the comment sections people saying, look, we don't need NATO. It's not that we would leave NATO and leave them to Spain. No. It's that the United States would kick Spain out of NATO. And you're saying, is that possible? Absolutely it is. And if you think the EU is strong enough to stand up to that, not so, Cotton Joe.
We're unwilling to help us. Now, in all fairness, I didn't speak to Mark about it. I think if I did, it might have been different, but we didn't need help. But I was really testing. I wanted to see whether or not they'd be there. And the answer is they were. I spoke to Germany. I spoke to France. Spoke to UK. Spoke to Italy. I didn't speak to Spain. Spain is a wasted cause. We don't want to do any trade business with Spain anymore, by the way. I'd like you to cut it off.
Now, there's a lot more to dive into this. Radio crew, we're going to send you guys to the commercial break so that the FCC doesn't shoot me in the kneecaps. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. We'll continue on the live stream. So the initial technicality argument that came out, all of these pundits immediately sprinted forward and said, actually, Mr. President, you can't cut off trade with Spain because to cut off trade with Spain is to cut off trade with the entire EU. And here's a little fun fact. The President of the United States, under his reaffirmed by the Supreme Court of the United States authority, has the ability to issue a partial or full economic embargo of any country he wants at any time to, quote, Brett Kavanaugh, he damn well pleases, end quote. And so if the president of the United States sees Spain turning against the alliance of NATO as a national security threat, Spain does not get magical, wonderful trade benefits just because they're a member of the European Union. What's the EU going to do? What, cut off our Swiss chocolates? Oh, the horror. Anyway, here's the reporter trying to say, Mr. President, are you aware of subsection 3 of the EU Supercharter?
Mr. President,
Yes.
if you cut off trade with Spain, does that mean that you're going to have to renegotiate a trade agreement with the EU?
With who?
With the EU, any past trade agreements you already have?
We're going to see what happens with the EU. You know, they've treated us very badly for years.
The president's making it clear, if the EU wants to throw a fit over Spain, it's welcome to. That's the president's answer. I'm not going to play the entire clip for you. That's essentially what he says. We'll have to take a look at it then. I bet the EU caves. And boy, howdy, guess what? When you had Mark Carney of Canada come out and say, yeah, the president's kind of won these arguments. By the way, you're kind of cooked. Keir Starmer in the UK is cooked. France is having its issues, I know, day ending in Y. Germany, Friedrich Merz comes forward and makes it clear Trump applies a forceful approach. You know who I really don't want to piss off? The President of the United States. Here's the Chancellor of Germany.
Kann ich da abschließend nichts dazu sagen, aber diese
Now he's speaking in German, so I'm going to do a little of the old translating here. He says, I don't want to say anything defensive about it, but these talks are taking place.
wir wissen
And we've
seit
known
Trump 1,
since Trump won, since Trump's first
sehr
administration,
häufig
he is very often,
massiven Auftritt, auch Druck aufbaut.
he builds up pressure with a massive appearance.
Das noch mal von
And I
der
want to say it again, from a
konstruktiven
constructive
Seite aus
point of
sagen,
view,
die letzten amerikanischen Präsidenten, die uns freundlich gebeten
the last American presidents who kindly
macht doch
asked
jetzt
us
endlich mal ein bisschen mehr
to finally
für
do a
eure
little
eigene
more for
Verteidigung.
our own defense
Sind
have
überall
fallen on deaf ears. The president of the United States, according to Friedrich Merz, says when Trump comes in here and says, do what I want or get the hell out, you're fired, the European countries go, oh my gosh, we have a lot of mediocre hospitals, but we have no military. We have one Danish guy holding a pride flag and he's holding it the wrong direction. He's holding a US flag twirler's fake rifle. Oh my gosh, someone replaced half of the German armed forces with guys holding Nerf guns. We can't live without the United States. Do you know which country in NATO has understood this since the beginning? Poland. Poland has understood this since the beginning. And it is the people of Poland, it is the government of Poland, who essentially is deciding not between the far left and kind of a center European right of sorts, but what you actually are seeing is the Polish people and several other, not just Eastern European countries, but Central and some Western European countries that are starting to put forward ideas, policies, and candidates that are aligned with the United States, not just in terms of giving up their sovereignty to the US, but saying, you know what, if Trump says, we're going to pay 5%, you should also pay 5%, you'll find some Europeans going, man, that, you know, I know my cousin just got back from the World Cup and said that things were actually pretty okay over there. Maybe we do some of this stuff. I mean, it's making a lot of sense, or euros, or whatever the hell we're using for currency. So it just seems like in this instance that Spain, well, again, we're going to let the radio crew come back from commercial here in a second. I need you to hear the Danish reporter and then Mark Rutte, the Secretary General of NATO, because that's where this all boils down. All right, the radio crews are back with us from the commercial break. Thanks for letting me get a sip of coffee there. Now we get to the fun stuff. So Mark Rutte allows, sitting next to the President of the United States, as Trump says, you know what? Spain sucks. And a Danish reporter, because of course, essentially crying into the microphones like, why, Mark Rutte? Why did you sit there and let him say so many things about the great nation of Spain? Here you go.
Rasmus Svaneborg from the Danish news agency.
Yes, hi.
Danish news agency Ritzau. Mark, you sit next to Donald Trump in moments where he talks about conquering Greenland, talks about lashing out at allies like Spain, starting trade wars, things that it doesn't seem like the old Mark Rutte would approve of. Does this have any effect on your self-respect when you sit next to him like that and say nothing?
That is the gayest question I have ever heard from an international conference, like an international journalist. Basically, what he's saying is Trump sat there and he talked about holding all of the allies to the same set of standards. Hold on, I need my pearls here to clutch. And he talked about how all of the NATO allies in this military alliance organization, this mutual aid organization, should all condemn the same terrorists. Oh, the horror. And then he said that he wants Greenland. He thinks that since Greenland is, again, the region, the territory that is closest to the Arctic Circle, and is also a place the U.S. has discovered the most of by gross land mass, also kept in on behalf of the Danish. Oh, hey, the Danish, there you go. Regarding World War II, because Denmark surrendered to the Nazis in 0.45 seconds. That maybe, you know, oh, how the old Mark Rutte would have stood up to Donald Trump. Where's your self-respect, sir?
You know, what I always do is acknowledge when praise is due, and I think we should praise Donald Trump for the fact that NATO is so much stronger. Of course, it has to do with the Russian threat, it has to do with the war in Ukraine, but it very much also has to do with President Trump delivering now what since Eisenhower the United States tried to achieve, equalizing spending between the US and Europe.
That's correct. And again, you can see Mark Rutte here also losing his patience. He says, look, the United States since Eisenhower and all the way through Ronald Reagan made it very clear Europe needs to pony up expenses. Yes, the Marshall Plan is going to get things going. Then you guys also have to get things moving. There is a reason why Western Germany was allowed to militarize. That is a very, very important piece of the pie. The original qualm with NATO, according to the, again, by all means, pick up a book. The original issue with France getting into NATO was not that France would spend lots of money to actually become an equal paying member of NATO. It's that they didn't want their supreme super duper generals to be answerable to the United States Allied Command. It is quite literally France who threw fits upon fits over standardization of things. And then, I mean, again, Spain and its disaster ever since. I mean, I to be very clear with you guys, I will never quite get over the fact that Spain is directly responsible, out of sheer incompetence, for the deaths of Americans, Englishmen, and Frenchmen in Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan. I'll never forget that. All of the other allies that we had went into Afghanistan with us and did what they were supposed to do, but the Spanish. Again, their modern navy has run aground more than any other modern navy combined. But alas, more news to get to other than my particular gripes. The Mark Rutte also makes it very clear that Trump is currently right when it comes to the United States' desire to control and develop Greenland, given the threats of Russia and China in the modern stage.
Secretary General, how concerned are you that President Trump has brought back his desire to control Greenland? In January, this sparked a huge crisis inside the alliance, forced you to get involved.
A huge crisis? Are you serious? My dude, the news cycle has been going on for so long at this point with the Trump administration. The bags under my eyes have bags. This was not the cycle of all news cycles. J.D. Vance visited a base in the middle of bleeping nowhere. The biggest international scandal was that there was someone in the U.S. government who AI photoshopped penguins onto like a picture of Greenland, and there are no penguins that are in like that part of the hemisphere. So that's the scandal. That's crisis, really?
Personally, and almost started a trade war with the EU. Further, you told Trump this morning that you personally will make sure that an agreement on Greenland is implemented. Is that a promise you're allowed to make? Is that not the sovereign right of the Danish and Greenlandic people?
The Danish. Oh, yes. The Danish again. Here, yes. Please, their great armies and navies will defend it to the very last Danish, I'm sure.
Thank you.
What the President and I agreed in Davos in January is, first of all, for when it comes to the defense of the Arctic, he absolutely was right. Because there is a huge risk that Russia and China will gain more and more access to the Arctic. And the discussion we had and the deal we made is for NATO, particularly the 7 countries bordering on the Arctic, including, of course, the US through NORSCOM and NORAD, so that means Canada with NORAD, and then, of course, the 5 European allies, so Iceland, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and Norway, working together, backed up by all the other allies, making sure that the Arctic stays safe. This is Arctic Sentry, launched by the Supreme Allied Commander early February. And then secondly, and here you're right, I'm not allowed to discuss or make any commitments on this second part. The second part is about trilateral talks between the US, Greenland, and Denmark.
He is correct. He is allowed as the Secretary General to call a conference of leadership. Okay, don't blame me. That would be Dwight D. Eisenhower who made that a thing. Now, we do have to shift away very, very briefly here. We have breaking news just now coming into us over here on the show. Excuse me. As far as we are aware right now, there are a series of explosions which have been reported in northern Iran. I repeat, a series of explosions in northern Iran. There are a lot of photos that are swimming around. None of these have yet been confirmed. But possible U.S. strikes against rail bridge infrastructure in northern Iran. That's in the Golestan province of northeastern Iran, bordering both the Caspian Sea and Turkmenistan. This is one of the areas where it was suspected China was attempting to smuggle either some type of supplies or resources into Iran, and where the Iranians tried to do their pickup truck convoy of oil in the middle of the United States kind of medial campaign. So again, a lot of things that are currently going on here regarding the Iranian situation. We're trying to make sure that we keep you guys abreast of some of these details. Additionally, here in regarding Golestan and the possible U.S. strikes currently underway, maybe in northern Iran, Golestan has not been targeted since the height of the Iranian war conflict in March of 2026. Now, some Iranian news sources are now suggesting that the people of Akhala have heard several explosions from the area of the city. Let me do one quick triple check here on the location of Akhala here. Yes, it is. That is in essentially the Caspian Sea on its southeastern point. Akhala and Gorgan are right next to each other. It's a sub-manufacturing and port, not necessarily on the port of the Caspian Sea, but it's a manufacturing and rail hub. So like rail interchanges happen in both Gorgan and Akhala, moving to the north up near the Iranian border with Turkmenistan. So we're keeping an eye on this situation. People are reporting in the region several enemy projectiles hitting the Akteke Khan Bridge on the train track in the western border of Akhala City. There you go. Every once in a while, that part of the old memory kicks in. Now, according to Axios, President Trump told reporters aboard Air Force One earlier that Iranian officials, quote, called a little while ago and they want to make a deal, end quote. Now, it appears if these strikes are ongoing, that the president may look at these particular series of strikes and say, no. And if that's the case, then we're going to see a very, very different couple of weeks. But I'm pretty sure that at this point, at least, there are some individuals, there are Islamic regime supporters, for example, in Mashhad, Iran, hanging a banner from one of their tallest skyrises with a fist raised in the air that says, "We will kill Trump," in bold English text. So I'm not really getting the vibe of a lot of deal making that is up for possibility here. Want to see one other detail here before I send the radio crew over to commercial. Okay, yes, we can confirm that there are still a couple of strikes that are ongoing along the Iranian coastline along the Strait of Hormuz. That's the last thing that I wanted to confirm, particularly near Qeshm Island. We'll be keeping an eye on that, radio crew. I know we have to send you guys over to the commercial break. We have a lot of news to cover and not a lot of time to get there, boys and girls. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Now, on the international side, over here in the United States, Representative Carlos A. Gimenez, that's from Florida's 28th, has now resigned as the co-chair of the Congressional Friends with Spain caucus. Now, there's a lot of performative caucuses inside of Congress. For all we know, there may be a congressional friendship of Dr. Seuss, kind of a caucus. But it is of note that you do see a shift in the United States against Spain. Has me reminiscing for the days of President McKinley yet again. Anyway, from Representative Gimenez, quote, breaking, I have resigned as co-chairman of the Congressional Friends of Spain caucus. Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez is actively undermining our bilateral relationship and targeting America's closest ally. Interesting stuff. Now, again, over here at home, there's quite a bit more on the foreign side. The FBI has announced through FBI Director Kash Patel that they have arrested, quote, 113 active spies. So this summary provided here to us by producer Jem, because there's a lot of this involving ransomware. As you may be aware, a lot of manufacturing sites, a lot of medical institutions have been hit with ransomware over the last couple of years. So for example, here's what'll happen. Your local hospital, or let's say a manufacturing center of some sort, maybe in, corporate office stuff, they've been using Microsoft XP from 2003, with the green rolling hills and the blue start menu, green stuff, that kind of a thing. And they never really updated. And it turns out you don't just update computers because you get new shiny buttons and minimalist graphics. There are also some security features that are also necessary. And a lot of these companies, again, as they get older, when they don't update certain things, like the FAA, they're very vulnerable to foreign threats. And so you've had private and state-sponsored terrorism from China, from Russia, from actors inside North Korea, from Iran, from other third world countries and second world countries, from Europe to Asia to Africa, which have participated in ransomware, in which case they will essentially install something on your computer because someone clicked on something they shouldn't have. And then when you reboot the computer, there's a lovely little thing that greets you and says, hey, give us lots of money, or A, we will leak everything to everyone, B, we will delete your entire company's service, or C, you give us lots and lots of money. And unfortunately for many of these organizations,
answer there, the daily double.
They get themselves a daily double and find out that they both get screwed and pay lots of money. And that, of course, is in addition to all of the foreign actors on espionage. We'll talk a little bit about that with Steve Cortez here in a couple of minutes. But over the past several months, quote, the FBI and the Department of Justice have significantly expanded their campaign against cybercrime, announcing numerous arrests, extraditions, guilty pleas, and convictions involving ransomware gangs, cryptocurrency theft, online fraud, and state-linked hacking. Authorities extradited alleged Scattered Spider member Peter Stokes from Finland to face charges tied to more than 100 corporate network intrusions and over $100 million in ransom demands. Sentenced Russian initial access broker Alexei Volkov for selling access to victim networks by ransomware gangs. It's a mess. And it's only now being talked about because this FBI is doing a couple of things. All right, now our radio crew is back from the commercial break. Remember Edward Snowden and the hero and the champion that he was for exposing the NSA? So the issue with Edward Snowden is that he is directly affiliated with and participated in the mentoring of Alexei Volkov, again, who has worked on behalf of Russia to ransom a lot of United States medical institutions to either get paid or release your data to the public. Your data, like your private HIPAA-protected data. So as far as some of the libertarian freedom fighters who've been fighting against the United States, yes, in fact, have been, working for the foreign actors who have been hurting not big companies that have insurance, but you specifically, and your data being released to the public. Now, the Department of Justice has also imprisoned members of Alf V, Black Cat, Denis Zolotarvos, a member of a prolific Russian ransomware gang, 276 different arrests on multiple criminal scam centers. You know I don't need to tell you about how prolific those have become in American society. Now, FBI Director Kash Patel announced the 113 active spies from foreign countries arrested. Obviously, these include those from Venezuela, from Cuba, from China, as well as Iran. Individuals, 4,800 cartel arrests, and 850 active plotters who have been stopped, and a 77% surge in cyber indictments. Now, he announced this with this kind of a promo video.
There's a war for our national security. The FBI is leading the charge.
I don't care for that. I don't care for that. I don't care for the Hawaii Five-0 theme behind it. I am very much of the numbers themselves are impressive, and I would much rather a law enforcement agency announcing arrests sound imposing rather than telling, I don't know, Starsky and Hutch that we got to go get them. I'm not for me. Maybe for y'all if you want to go check that out. FBI Director Kash Patel, again, his FBI has done a lot of coordinated efforts, especially since now being under the direction of the Department of Justice with Todd Blanche. Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche is a lot less about getting up in front of the podium and bragging, and a lot more on actually carrying out a series of policy proposals that are very popular with Americans and, yeah, just so happen to have been recommended under the Heritage Foundation and other conservative organizations' Project 2025. Oh, how the turns have tabled. Now, there are a couple of things here at home that are still of deep concern. There is a situation currently being investigated. The suspect is behind bars. A victim in a wheelchair was set ablaze outside of an Oklahoma City Police Department headquarters. The individual is expected to recover from injuries. The suspect is behind bars. Horrible situation. The violence in this country is increasing. Again, as the rhetoric, as the encouragement of domestic terrorism increases. And individuals are encouraged to be given next to no prison time for aiding and abetting individuals who are committing incredibly violent acts. We point out the individual who committed a brutal beating that resulted in a murder in California that is now going to face only a year in the county jail, or the judge in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, who, after helping an illegal immigrant avoid federal law enforcement, and clearly acting in a series of federally illegal activities, has now been given no prison time whatsoever, thanks to the Bill Clinton appointed judge who made sure that was possible. Now, what is the Trump administration doing in response? A couple of things that are on my wish list, believe it or not, I'm very, very happy to say. And a couple of these things on my wish list include making it far more difficult for those who are illegal immigrants and have been given commercial driver's licenses from California, from Pennsylvania, from Massachusetts. The Trump administration is now doing what I've suggested, putting a lot of Department of Homeland Security checkpoints at way stations along all major interstates and many state highways in the country, so that those who don't speak English and shouldn't have commercial driver's licenses are taken off of the roads. Here was Tom Homan on Fox News today.
The number of illegal commercial driver's license revoked as of May 1st was over 28,000, which seems significant. But out of how many? Like, what do you know what the denominator is?
That's a work in progress, because again, getting information from, some of the sanctuary states is a struggle, and Sean Duffy's suing, DOJ suing. So
this will end up in front of the Supreme Court. For the record, that's where this is going.
We're trying to get all this information we can. And we got a lot of it. We got a lot of people we're looking for. We're actually, some states we're actually working way stations with the troopers, trying to get these people as they're coming through. So it's a work in progress. President Trump's serious about this. ICE is out there with the local law enforcement and state law enforcement, wherever they will allow us to work with them, to ID these people and take them off the street.
Correct. Now, there are several states' attorneys general that are participating in the same thing. In my home state of Indiana, Attorney General Todd Rokita, who I'll be honest with you, call it nepotism, call it insight or whatever, after the series of semi-accidents here in the state of Indiana, in which there were those who are foreigners who do not speak English, who did not take the time to learn the language, who are unsafe, who were part of shell companies, given commercial driver's licenses from all different blue states. I called the Attorney General and said, you have to start doing a couple of things to stop this. And I made some helpful suggestions. Well, Attorney General Todd Rokita, like a lot of states' attorneys general, has come through. He's terminated all existing commercial driver's licenses held by illegal aliens. He's mandated English proficiency for CDL testing and has created penalties for truck driving schools and employers who knowingly hire or retain individuals with invalid licenses. No more than 80,000 pound trucks operated by unlicensed, unvetted illegal aliens who can't even read road signs. Indiana is leading the way. Every other state should follow suit. Now, I believe that there needs to be a Supreme Court level of intervention in which the Interstate Commerce Clause is put directly against national security measures. This is something that I would constitute under the executive as a national emergency. When the state of California can do something that allows a national security and a major health risk, a civil danger to Americans to persist, and the state of Texas then wants to sue California, or the state of Indiana wants to sue California for these processes, then the Supreme Court of the United States, as Clarence Thomas, justice, arguably one of the best justices on the bench, wanted to hear all state-to-state lawsuits or state versus state lawsuits. Chief Justice John Roberts said no, because Chief Justice John Roberts hates ruling on things, which is, I'm sure, what anyone would want out of a Supreme Court justice. Anywho, We have far more things to talk about here on the show this evening. Before we get the radio crew out of here, Vice President J.D. Vance now off the foreign policy beat, and not just because it's better for kind of the foreign policy beat. Vice President J.D. Vance, his passions and his interests coming out of, again, the same part of Kentucky that I'm from, also being raised by his grandmother, growing up in Ohio, dealing with and seeing the impact of drug abuse here in the Rust Belt, seeing manufacturing leaving, the economies being hollowed out. He has a passion for actually seeing fraud combated and federal resources and state resources being spent appropriately, you know, what you're paying for. And he talked about a couple of initiatives in fighting fraud, this with the Department of Labor, investigating those violating laws regarding visas, H-1B visa fraud. Now, radio crew, we do have to send you guys out for the evening. While I've been setting up this clip, that time has now run out. We will catch you guys tomorrow, 7 p.m. Eastern. We're going to continue on the live stream. This Iranian situation is still ongoing. And then, of course, we have a lot to talk about, polling as well as the Department of Labor. This is the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Folks, here's the Vice President.
Now, I want to talk about another fraud crackdown, and this is almost hard to believe. But, you know, we have a program called the H-1B visa program. This goes to show how broad-based the fraud task force is. We're fighting for your taxpayer money, but we're also making sure that fraudsters don't take advantage of these visa programs. Now, why does this program exist? This is a visa program that was set up to ensure that if you were a brilliant technology person or a brilliant scientist or a brilliant doctor, you could come to the United States and get access to this visa program.
And why? Because in the United States, it takes a lot of effort to reach engineering prowess, to reach physicist prowess, chemist, you know, a high-level coder prowess. And so what the H-1B visa system was meant to do was to provide a way to fill the shortage the United States had as we were technologically advancing at a rate no country had even conceived of doing. Frederick II, eat your heart out. And in this case, now today, there are pipelines for American citizens to be doing a lot of jobs that are being taken by those who were never meant to be a part of the H-1B visa system. That'll be a point that Steve Cortez is going to make here in a moment. We'll let the Vice President finish.
But you know what's happening way too much? Is that big corporations and fraudsters overseas are using this program to undercut the wages of American workers. So you know what we're doing in the Trump administration? We're saying no more. If you were trying to take advantage of that visa program, you are not allowed into the United States of America.
Now, the President of the United States and the Vice President have also made it clear that the Department of Justice, again, as well as several civil and anti-fraud groups within law enforcement, are going to be targeting those who are flaunting, or I should say flouting, the Supreme Court ruling on Title IX. Meaning that for those who are in public schools, that you should not, in fact, be putting transgender girls, otherwise known as biological boys, in girls' locker rooms, as well as on the athletic field, pitch, or court. Because again, we all know that males have inherent athletic advantages over females. No one should be punished for recognizing that truth. Supreme Court knows this very same thing too. Just days ago, if the court ruled that under both the U.S. Constitution and federal law, states are free to protect female athletes, that means that girls can compete on a level playing field now in 27 states. Therefore, it's incumbent on not just this administration, but also those in the United States, the active citizenry, to ensure the remaining 23 states stand up for safety and fairness too. Really, really important for girls like Callie Keeler, a high school wrestler in Washington, sexually assaulted by a male during the middle of the competition. Just one of hundreds of cases that we've talked about here on the show. No other female should have to experience what she did. Now, for us and over here at the show, this is one of the reasons that we're proud to be sponsored by the Alliance Defending Freedom. So I recommend signing the Alliance Defending Freedom's petition to protect female sports now. Visit joinadf.com/Tony or text Tony, Tony, to 83848 to add your name to their declaration, side with truth and fairness. That's joinadf.com/Tony or text Tony to 83848. It's time to level the field nationwide. But the administration can only do so much. The administration can fight this stuff. The Alliance Defending Freedom can fight this kind of stuff. Absolutely it can. We here on the show, we can fight these kind of things. It is ultimately going to be up to Congress. I say again, it's going to be left up to Congress in order to actually get some of these things cemented and codified into law. And that brings us to the midterm election. So we have to reset the clock now that it's after 8 p.m. Eastern. We have a ton more show tonight. A great conversation with the Daily Signal's contributor, Steve Cortez, on some of the polling data. And we're not doing any like very basic, oh, hey, here's the picture. What could it mean? We're going to dive right into the details. We're not going to waste your time. Don't go anywhere. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIPC.
We have quite a few contributors for the Daily Signal, but when you need a guy that has an inside track on the tea leaf reading, the poll reading, actually getting the hieroglyphics off the walls of the pyramids and to your home, we go to Steve Cortez, the man, the myth, the legend, former Trump and Vance advisor, and a guy who actually is literate in a lot of this polling data beyond the broadcast TV pluff and fluff. Steve, it's a wild world out there for the roller coastering polls. How you doing?
Hey, Tony, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Yes, I've been polling at least monthly now for the last 2 years, and certainly have learned a lot, and I think have gotten better at it. Thankfully, have a very good track record, particularly looking at 2024. We got 6 out of the 7 swing states correct. We didn't get Pennsylvania correct, which still bothers me, but we got 6 of the 7 right, and right almost to the 10th of a percentage. Now, that doesn't mean past, as they say in financial markets, past performance doesn't always guarantee future results, but we've also gotten recent primaries very correct. So we're not perfect, but we've got a very good methodology. I try to be very scientific in the way that I approach it. We want the best possible market information, not necessarily what fits our ideological bias. So polling, I think, is really important for any practitioner in politics, and frankly, for any patriot who really cares about the country.
Perfectly said, and it's obviously something that I care about, given that a lot of pollsters will simply kind of rest on the laurels and say, this is the new model, it will never change. I think it's that kind of hyper focus on what was missed kind of here or there with Pennsylvania that means the next set of data is going to be that much better. So let's dive in. On the right-leaning side, you've got Scott Rasmussen, who's spending a lot of time focusing on Democrats' plummeting chances of taking the Senate. Graham Platner, an obvious mess that's resonating across the country. Now into the Nebraska Osborne Senate race, getting him in there, kind of dragging Democrats in the Senate races, kicking and screaming into the Platner mess. And then you've got Harry Enton and his crew on CNN focusing on the House and how maybe things don't look as great for Republicans in maintaining the House this midterms. Are people just kind of focusing on what looks good for their audience? What are we seeing here despite all of the meteorological fanfare?
Sure. Tony, I think there's some of that bias confirmation, clearly, but they can obviously both be right? The Republicans can keep the Senate and the Democrats can take the House. That certainly looks like the most likely scenario right now. When I look at the House side, and by the way, Harry Enton, I think, is one of the few people on CNN who's generally trying to be objective. So I will give him credit.
I agree, and we play his clips on the show for a reason.
Cool. Yeah. On a network that doesn't have many people seeking the truth, I think he mostly genuinely is, even though he clearly personally leans left. I don't think he lets it dominate his analysis and his work. So look, he's probably right that the battle for the House is uphill for the Republicans. The burden of proof, in other words, is on them. They are clearly underdogs. Now, based on my polling, I don't think they're as big of underdogs, though, as, for example, the prediction markets have right now. So if you go to Kalshi or Polymarket, right now the Republicans are only trading at 18 cents. So that means essentially you get a 4-to-1 payout if you bet on the Republicans keeping control of the House. So anybody who knows betting, sports betting, for example, that is significant, right? They are very serious underdogs. Now, I don't view it there. I think that should probably be more like 40% chance. I don't think it should be all the way down at 18. Now, I don't think it should be at 50. I don't think it should get a coin flip. It certainly shouldn't be at 60 where the Republicans are favored. But here's my main rationale from my polling. Even though things are uphill, the economy is very unpopular right now. Affordability is an issue, okay? And any Republican who tells you it isn't just isn't paying attention to this country, isn't paying attention to polling. People are just about as mad about affordability now as they were during the Biden era, except now they have transferred the blame. They effectively blame Republicans. You might say that's illogical. Perhaps it is. It might be unwarranted. But the reality on the ground is that people are still unhappy with the economy. regular folks who don't own a lot of financial assets still have a lot of anxiety and angst about affordability, and they blame the governing Republicans. So that's the problem, the biggest problem by far faced by Republicans. Now, having said that, though, and I think this is really important, Tony, if you just showed me those economic numbers that I'm polling, and and I'm doing this as objectively as possible, as I mentioned.
Right.
If you showed me those numbers in isolation, and then you showed me generic ballot, and you showed me some of the different races, I would say, we're going to get creamed. We're going to lose by double digits. But guess what? We're not. The Republicans are actually quite close in generic ballot, quite close in a lot of statewide races that really matter, for example, for the Senate and for governor. And what does that tell me? Well, a couple things. Number one, voters are smart enough, even if they don't like the economy, to still judge an individual race based on the merits of those two candidates put in front of them. But that's the other key, is that these races are binary, right? And so they're given a choice. And they may not love this economy, and they may not love Republicans, but the Democrats not a viable alternative for a lot of Republicans. This Democrat Party is simply so radical, and their brand is in such free fall, and that's not my opinion. Again, that's based on polling.
Correct.
It is an absolute garbage brand. So given that, what the Republicans might benefit from, now, obviously, I want the economy to get better. I want people to feel better about the economy by the time they cast their ballots in November. I think that can happen, and I don't think that's just hopium. I think there are reasons to believe that can happen. But having said that, let's say it's status quo. When you don't have the strongest team to put on the floor, every coach will tell you, you really hope for a weak opponent. In the case of this election, the Republicans have, in many cases, in almost all cases, really weak, really radical, very unlikable, unpalatable opponents on the Democrat side, which is why, again, I don't think Republicans are majority likely to take it, but I don't think it's 18 either. I think it's probably more like 40% right now and potentially climbing.
Well, I mean, prediction markets have a way of taking a 45 to 65 issue and turning it into a 90-10. And that's traditional, because when that starts to lean, betting markets lean hard and fast. This is something I've posited before the audience here a couple of times over the last week and a half, and that in this election, you really have three different candidates in the voters' minds in a binary election. So you have the Republicans, who have kind of in Congress become more populist, kind of more moderate when it comes to their plans for the economy, when it comes to a lot of things, a lot of let's not get too hasty, and a lot of legislation. And then you have the Democrats, who have adopted just straight up open socialism. We're going to promise you universal this, that, and the other. It's going to be wonderful. It's going to be beautiful. And the bread lines, but the bread lines are going to be amazing, Steve. Everyone's going to love the bread lines. So the thing is, Republicans, Democrats, independents, there's a lot of Americans that I think wish for a candidate that doesn't exist in this race. So right now you have the Republicans, the moderates, the some of the wishy-washies in some cases, and then you have the crazy Democrats, and there's this ghost candidate of the Reagan-esque Newt Gingrich era Republican. And the voters are saying, well, I'm not going to get who I think would be great for the economy, so I'm left between the mediocre, the Susan Collins, or I'm left with the insane, smacking himself in the head with a hammer, alleged rapist or open communist kind of candidate.
Right.
Not only is it going to be a low propensity election, but the moderates are carrying Republicans now in the way that the moderates theoretically carry Democrats in 18 and 20. Am I off, or again, you're the expert on this?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely onto something, and I certainly am seeing that in my polling. Theoretically, if Democrats existed who said, we're going to push sort of a center-left economic agenda, in other words, we're going to talk about a lot of free stuff, because let's face it, free is seductive, okay? It is. This is just human nature. It's not logical. Of course, we know it's ultimately not free, but if they could just stick to a center-left economic message and not
like Josh Hawley every once in a while.
Okay, yeah, and not do the rest of the crazy. Okay, not abolish
exactly.
ICE, not I hate men, I hate Christians, I hate America, right? That candidate, that theoretical candidate who does not exist, to your point, would be very compelling and would probably win most swingy areas, whether it's a state or a district in America. But that candidate does not exist, because the only people who are leaning left economically, first of all, they're not leaning, all right, they're lurching left economically. But the point is, even if they're able to seduce some voters, with those, no, they won't call them Marxists, but by those Marxist overtures, they repel voters when they start talking about their agenda of hatred, right? Which is just, it is endemic in what they believe.
Ooh, those white men owning homes, those homes should be reserved for the migrants Biden let in. And there's the housing market.
Yeah. Exactly. And when they talk about, and by the way, I do think, though, that we need to take this DSA, Democratic Socialist crowd, seriously. I mean, they're not socialists, they're Marxists. We need to call them out for what they are, but that's not enough. We can't just say they're Marxists and count on that term, correct term, as being enough to persuade people, especially young people who, remember, did not live through the Cold War, don't necessarily believe Marxism is wrong. Certainly, many of them having been indoctrinated in an education system and by a popular culture that, if anything, embraces the left. So we also have to offer, yes, describe correctly who they are, but Tony, then also offer the populist right case for the economy. And I think the centerpiece, the foundation of the populist right economic agenda to make sure that real wages grow for working class people is immigration, meaning get every illegal out of this country, no tolerance for illegality in any form in the United States of migrants. But I also believe in restricting even legal migration to this country. And for example, phasing out worker visas. If we make that kind of appeal, that is such a contrast to where the left is. The left is saying, no, open borders and abolish ICE, path to citizenship for every trespasser who broke into our country. All right, that's what the populist left says. So even though they have a certain appeal by promising free stuff, I think we can neutralize that appeal and reverse it to a strength for us if we lead with immigration, but immigration primarily as an economic agenda and an economic argument.
This is one of the things that I believe that some of my friends, on this side of the aisle, the more traditional conservatives, the more free market hardliner conservatives, really start to make a mistake, because there's not quite the free market that there is theoretically supposed to be here. And this is the case for the right populists to the party, that it's not as though my benefits that I'm paying to the federal government are just going to Americans. It's that these benefits are going to individuals who shouldn't have been here in the first place, who have benefited off of temporary protected status that isn't temporary, that have benefited off of illegally immigrating, and then, come on, it's just a Maryland man, that kind of stuff. And not only that, on the corporate sector, and of course, my team's been keeping me very up to date on this. Microsoft is announcing this large shift of layoffs. A lot of companies are, a lot of them American workers, while their applications for H-1B visas from foreigners coming in, those are skyrocketing. So you have Americans being laid off and they're hiring and visaing in foreigners. That kind of stuff shouldn't be legal. That's not free market, whatever. That's gaming the system over someone you know is going to do cheap slave labor.
That's exactly right. And that's why, I've been saying that to give the counter argument, the correct counter and the positive alternative to this socialist Marxist argument, we can't throw a Milton Friedman speech at them. OK, that's not going to work, particularly for young people. What we need to do is give them the vision of where the populist right will take them and what is our prosperity agenda. For working class people and especially for young people. And young people are disproportionately impacted by foreign workers. It's both the H-1B, which you mentioned, but also the OPT, where every foreign student in the United States gets at least a year. If they're in STEM, they get 2 to 3 years, automatically work visa in the United States, hundreds of thousands of them every single year. No questions asked. An ability to stay in the United States and to take jobs that Americans are vying for and more than capable of filling. But these big businesses prefer the foreigners. Why? Because they'll work for less because of their immigration status and because they want that OPT to then turn into an H-1B, to then eventually turn into citizenship, to turn into chain migration. And all of a sudden, one foreign student going to an American university results in a village, literally a village from India, ending up in the United States. And they may not be here for the right reasons. They may not share our values. They may not be bringing skills. But at the least, they're displacing Americans who are more than capable of doing these jobs. And you're exactly correct. When these big companies fire Americans, lay off Americans, and then immediately add jobs in the worker visa programs, that is an outrage. It's an affront. And here's the thing, too. On top of it, a lot of those, particularly the tech companies in Silicon Valley, they have foreign CEOs doing it. So they have foreign nationals as their CEOs sitting in Silicon Valley, laying off hardworking Americans, hiring people often from their home countries, their countries of origins. And we on the right shouldn't stand for this. We can't stand for this. right? And the leftists, they hate America, and we would never embrace them. We don't form an alliance with them, but the leftists get some things right, and they do get right identifying the angst of working class Americans, and it's valid, right? It's not laziness. It's not, it's not just excuse making. This is very tangible and very real. It gave rise to the Tea Party on the right, to, of course, the America First movement, to Trump's election the first and second time. And I think it can be the dominant theme of American politics for decades to come if we position it properly with the right policies and the right messaging.
I think in the way that that kind of Jordan Peterson had kind of framed it, not to, say, when you've got your old man fighting the dragon, but like, I mean, in the case of the right and the left, that the right is for driving the train and making sure that the train moves quickly and carries the most stuff. And the left is supposed to be concerned with stuff falling off of the train. And that what falls off. And most of the time, the left in the last 10 years has focused on a bunch of things that were not supposed to be on the train in the first place. But occasionally a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. And they do discover that, yes, there are Americans that are being taken advantage of by policies that aren't meant to support them first. Again, if I'm going, and this is the Big Ten opportunity for the right, if I'm going to have to pay toward federal benefits of some kind, then they damn well better be going to Americans.
Right.
End of story. If I'm going to be paying it, then I want to see what I'm paying for be used correctly. Unfortunately, the FCC is going to kneecap me if we let this go on without cutting over to commercial. So, Steve Cortez, again, huge appreciation for your polling work. We'll have you on as we get closer to the midterms. Thanks for giving us an inside look at this forecast.
Tony, I appreciate it as always. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast. We have breaking news, and we can get right to it. Graham Platner, the now former Senate nominee candidate for the Democrats who had won the Maine Democrat primary, has dropped out. I repeat, Graham Platner, plagued with every single kind of scandal that you could throw at him, has now officially dropped out. He has said, quote, "My name might be on the ballot right now, but that ballot line belongs to the people of Maine, and we're working on getting that video over to you." It's a large file. It's a 12-minute long video. We will absolutely dive right into a little bit of it. Also, we're following massive news here on the other side. Let's make sure we have this. Also, from the Trump administration as well, the President of the United States, there are reports that Kharg Island is also currently on fire, which is the primary oil refinery for the Iranian regime. Guys, I hate to tell you this, but I don't know if we're going to be hopping off the air anytime soon now. With the news that is breaking right here and right now, a lot of stuff going on here on the Tony Kinnett Cast. If you're just joining us, we're outside of our broadcast hour. And maybe not. I'm getting word that our radio and TV syndication partners are actively linking back up with us to get to some of this information, because there is a lot that is going on. And the President of the United States is refiling the birthright citizenship case before the Supreme Court. Whoa, it's a very, very, very big evening. We've got a lot to cover here. All right, let's get into it. I think that we have the President of the United States on the Iranians calling for a deal and him saying maybe we're not going to be making a deal.
And when they hit, we hit back much harder.
Are we returning to full-scale military conflict, sir?
I don't know. I don't know. But win it very quickly. It's another way of doing it. We have many ways we can win. But we've already won militarily. They have very little left, and they want to make a deal so badly. They called a little while ago. They want to make a deal so badly. I just don't know if they're worthy of making a deal. I don't know that they're going to honor the deal. That's the problem.
If they want to make a deal, why do you think they attacked commercial vessels?
Because they're sort of crazy, to be honest with you. They're sort of crazy.
All right, we do actually now have the update on the Platner video. We've got it ready to go here for you. Graham Platner announcing that he is dropping out of the race in Maine. Again, as you remember, the deadline is July 13th. Let's hear what he has to say about some of these developing scandals.
Hey, everyone. It's Graham Platner here. I think as many of you know, over the past couple days, I have faced some very serious allegations, and I just want to make it clear. This is all false. The things that have been claimed did not happen. It's not real.
If it's not real and it didn't happen, why are you dropping out of the race? and again, not just from me, not just from here, yours truly, that's making this case. A lot of individuals on the Democrat side of the aisle have also said, hey, if you're innocent, if you didn't do any of this, then what's the deal here? Why drop out? That's a pretty good question. And he says, well, this is all very totally false. Everything's fine. Clearly it's not.
It has placed an immense amount of weight on me as I think about what needs to happen now. Amy and I are regular people. We were not looking for this experience. We were not.
Amy, he's referencing his wife, who he married in, I believe, 2023, 2022? He was cheating on his wife, Amy, with an active account on Kick Messenger. Kick Messenger, according to the New York Times, the Washington Post, the British Broadcasting Corporation, a multitude of independent studies. It's where predators message minors anonymously. He had an active account on Kick Messenger. Graham Platner standing in a towel. And it's, by the way, that account is still active today, even though they've now taken down the profile picture. That's not normal. That's not normal. That's not Amy and I are normal.
Looking to get into politics. We had no desire to run for office. I just want you to think about like what you would do as a regular person in a position where...
You know what I would do as a regular person? I would not get the Totenkopf SS tattoo. I wouldn't lie about having PTSD and then lie about having gone to join the mercenary organization Blackwater, the garbage bin of private military companies. I wouldn't lie about my oyster farm. I wouldn't lie about its only customer being my mommy, which, by the way, as Axios now points out what I've been saying for weeks and months, his mother's oyster farm or his mother's restaurant couldn't even survive providing oysters to her customers by just Graham's farm alone because he was bad at it. And then he was caught lying on everything from the message. You know, as a normal person, I've never said women deserve to be raped. As a normal person, I've never said veterans should die. As a normal person, I've never shoved a woman into a room and then held the door shut while she tried to get out. As a normal person, I've never gone to Planned Parenthood to get checked for STIs. As a normal person, I've never gone over to a girl's house who I was dating when she told me not to come over and then raped her. I've never had to do any of that as a normal person, and I'm going to take a wild guess that those who are currently tuning into this here at the Tony Kinnett Cast as we break down Graham Platner's dropping out video, normal people have never done any of this either.
A much larger world. Large forces were working against you personally to accuse you of the worst thing that a person could do, and it was not remotely true.
So if it's accusing someone, again, of the worst thing you could possibly do, why did Graham Platner have Reddit posts, which, again, he acknowledged were real, in which he said there were women who deserved to be raped? Why would you ever say that someone deserved the worst thing that you could do?
I learned about this through press inquiries with no time to truly respond, no time for investigations before a corporate media system and the political establishment got to act as judge, jury, and executioner.
No, I'm afraid not, because do you know what you would have done? Were those statements flagrantly false? You would have filed a defamation lawsuit immediately. Judge, jury, and executioner, my dude, you acted as your own jury. Why? Because your own posts on social media, your own posts, again, with your active account on Kick Messenger, made it very clear the kind of person you are. Independent journalists right now, independent with quotes, and journalists with quotes, like Michael Tracy over at Substack, making the claim that, oh man, these girls are just accusing regular guys. This isn't like Brett Kavanaugh, who was an upstanding guy and they had to go dredge up like a high school post from his yearbook where he's like, I like beer or something like that. That's not this. He had posts on social media where he wished death on veterans. And he said women deserved to be sexually assaulted. And by the way, I was on a CNN This Morning panel in which the CNN legal analyst agreed with me on this. Those posts are his. He was his own jury here, folks.
Accusations are supposed to be the beginning of things, not the end.
So I'm dropping out.
I think it's really important to understand why this is happening in the timeline, why this is happening right now. Much like October, when the first attack started, much like the news that was created the week before the primary, there is a reason that this is happening now.
Okay, so this only works if there were no screenshots or corroboration up until that moment. Again, Graham's Reddit posts, as acknowledged, by the way, by the two Bernie Sanders campaign operatives who said we campaigned, we plucked him out. We shared his name with Osborne, the independent, with quotes around it, the progressive running to be the senator from Nebraska. When they found Graham Platner, they knew about all these Reddit posts. They've said it on audio recordings. Oh, the first that we ever heard about it. No, see, we've known about the Totenkopf Nazi tattoo since back in the middle of the primary. And it was Ro Khanna and Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren and everyone all over the Democratic sphere who made it clear that, well, this didn't matter and that you had made mistakes, but you learned from them. Now all of a sudden you've made no mistakes again? I thought you were Mr. Redemption. Curious.
I only have until July 13th until I am officially the nominee. This was the last week to try to get me off of the ballot.
This is kind of fun here. I have never declared that I am running for Indiana's 6th congressional. I have never declared that I am running for senator, to be the next junior senator from the state of Indiana. Do you know what? I have my entire life up until now to not do rapey, abusive, gross things. And do you know what survey says? I've never done any of those things. It's not as though he's put up against the wire. He's put up against his own actions.
And that's why this is occurring.
Yeah.
It's not the false allegations, though, that have brought us to where we are.
Oh, here we go. All right, place your bets, boys and girls. Is he going to blame it on A, Trump, B, the Jews, C, the billionaires, or 4, the Heritage Foundation?
It's the fact that they are being used by the political establishment to
billionaires
put structural pressure on us.
Now, wait a minute. Wasn't it Bernie Sanders who was immune to all of the structure and the pressure? Right? Aren't the young socialists, the Zoran Mamdanis who defeated AIPAC, and Bernie Sanders, who rejected the establishment, they rigged the DNC against me. That's what they did. How are they falling to the pressure? I thought they were immune. Curious.
We live in a political system that is not built for normal people.
We live in a system. You think you were just staring at the woman in the red dress? Or were you making sexual comments about her on Reddit? Look again, Neo.
It is a system that is built structurally to make sure that movements like ours cannot flourish.
Ah, yeah, that's why the socialist Democrats, the open Marxists, the girls who refuse to say they're not communists, are winning primaries in New York and Colorado, and currently the frontrunner of the primary in Michigan for Senate. Oh, yes, that's why Bernie Sanders has been reelected so many times. I remind you that a running joke of the movie White Christmas from like the end of World War II was that it would be extremely difficult to dig up a Democrat in Vermont. Bernie Sanders has been the senator of Vermont for a long bleeping time. So don't give me this establishment, oh, that could never happen here. Tom Steyer, Mr. Super Duper Billionaire, couldn't buy an election in California. Katie Porter was supposedly an establishmentarian. She couldn't do it. Nope, I'm going to need a source, a citation, a something here, other than you just whining like a fit-throwing toddler.
That if they begin to succeed, they can be crushed. What we have accomplished here, you made possible.
Yes, I would love to say that I'm doing my part and did in fact make Graham Platner getting booted from the ballot again after the Lindsay Fifield allegations. Jamie Racicott and the other woman who also spoke to the New York Times, an ex of Graham Platner, then came forward with additional revelations and allegations and screenshots and corroboration and testimony from friends and from therapists, etc. So much so that even Hassan Piker, super Mr. Anti-Establishment, I'm told, was going to drop you like fresh garbage. But oh, thank you for making this possible. You got it, dude.
The people of Maine, the volunteers, the voters, the grassroots donors, and
in a picnic basket, in a funeral casket, on a train, in a plane. Now, I do appreciate here that he says the volunteers. A young lady by the name of Cheyenne Hunt is currently running an operation to compensate any staffer, past or present, that quits Graham Platner's campaign. This was posted this afternoon. I was planning to run this earlier in the show before, again, Graham Platner announced he's dropping out.
If you're a staffer on the Graham Platner campaign and you either just quit in solidarity with the survivors or you would like to quit but you're concerned about where your next paycheck is going to come from, send an email to supportforsolidarity@gmail.com and we will help you find your next gig. We made the same offer to Eric Swalwell's staff and sent around resumes for folks across all different levels of experience.
I mean, again, it appears that there are far more when it comes to individuals helping those who were fooled by your garbage. Again, I say fooled in kind of a jaded fashion. A lot of this stuff has been known for months. But anywho, he's got to get really passionate. Also, dude, brush your hair.
I have all the faith in the world that we could win if we could continue to harness that.
You don't, or you wouldn't be dropping out.
But the brutal political reality is that they are going to take everything away from us.
I mean, what kind of a country? You can't even go raping women and locking them in bedrooms. What? I thought this was America. What? How? You know, the working man can't lie about his PTSD and run a fake oyster farm, or excuse me, a grossly exaggerated oyster farm anymore. What's this world coming to? Bing Crosby didn't do all those Tropicana commercials just so you could be refused the right to cheat on your wife with other women and maybe children on Kick Messenger. So much so that there are entire Facebook groups dedicated to women talking about how you dated them at the same time after you were married in 2023. Oh, it ain't America anymore. Say it ain't so, Graham.
Those in power who have the ability to do so are using these allegations as an excuse to take away all of the things that we need to run a campaign.
Yes. Again, I will remind you that while there are crowds of young Marxist socialists in New York, that when Hakeem Jeffries, the Democrat, the minority leader of the House, it appears on screen, they chant vociferously, "You're next, you're next." Hassan Piker is not exactly cowed by institutional pressure from the Democratic corporate establishment. I guarantee you that Chuck Schumer, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, that group has tried on bended knee. We're talking like after George Floyd bended knee in the Kunta Kinte scarves, have begged for the bowing of pressure. That's not what did this.
We are going to lose our ability to fundraise. We are going to lose our ability to access voter data. We are going to lose all of the things that any campaign needs on the basic level simply to function. Larger organizations, the national level party, the bigger donor networks, they have all committed to spending no money in this race if I'm in it. They would rather see Susan Collins win.
There it is. Again, this choice was way back during the primaries, and there is a little truth to what he says here. You know, to be fair, there is a little something there. You know, you kind of hear, you can say that, it's a real shame that this kind of thing would happen, and now it could go to Susan Collins. Janet Mills has a far better opportunity to beat Susan Collins than Graham Platner. Or just to be clear here, it was the polls that in fact were slipping because of Graham Platner.
Then have me be the next senator from Maine.
Cry about it. Oh wait, pearls. Clutch them.
What comes next
is a federal investigation, I pray to God, over who you were messaging on Kik. I'm serious. If you are watching this at all for some reason, you have nothing else to do tonight, Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche, a U.S. prosecutor of some sorts, perhaps out there, Assistant Attorney General Harmeet Dillon, dear friend, investigate this man for who he was chatting with on Kik. Please. By all means, dig a little deeper, as they say. Go ahead and look into the dude. He ain't running for Senate anymore. He's suspended his campaign, which, as our political editor at the Daily Signal, Bradley Devlin, says, it's effectively the dropout.
Needs to come from the people. Needs to come from the people of Maine. Needs to come from the voters who on June 9th, at a strength of over 150,000, the largest number in the history of Maine primaries, said no to this kind of politics. Voted for a politics that would actually represent them. Voted against the political system, against the donor class, against the entrenched forces.
The entrenched forces. Ah, yes, storming the beaches, were you? Your tattoos for the other side, but ah, yes, Graham Platner, Super Normandy. Like all great heroes, faking his PTSD after several tours he signed up for, to then turn around and work for Blackwater. Ah, yes, okay.
And I'm not asking for how this process is going to work. I'm not trying to dictate to anyone who it should be or how we get there, but I will say this.
That there are reports from multiple individuals that it is, in fact, Graham Platner who has been making overtures to the rest of the DNC that he's not going to drop out until he gets to say who takes after him. So that's other media outlets reporting. I've only cited their reporting. I don't have any insider knowledge there. I did ask a friend of mine inside the national side of the DNC if that were true, and they said, I don't know. Those were their words.
It needs to be open, transparent, and democratic.
Have fun running a primary in 5 days.
It needs to be reflecting the will and the values of the people that built this movement, the people that showed up on June 9th. People in D.C. need to stay in D.C. Decisions should not be made in back rooms by people in places of political power.
They should be made in back rooms where you held Lindsay Feifeld against her will. Or made in the back rooms where you allegedly raped Jamie Racicot, according to her testimony. Or in the back rooms where you messaged dozens of women, and maybe children, that aren't your wife. Or in the back rooms where you made Reddit posts calling for the deaths of U.S. veterans who said deserved to be sniped by the Islamic terrorists in the Middle East. Or the women that you said deserved to be raped or sexually assaulted over on Reddit. Boy, those back rooms. How the turntables, to quote Michael Scott.
Party apparatchiks are not the ones to make these decisions. These decisions need to be made in the open by the people of this state, the people who got us here. This is exactly the kind of political system that everyone voted against.
So actually, the Maine Democratic Party, according to a post on X shared with us by our Daily Signal correspondent, Rebecca Downs, who's been doing a phenomenal job keeping us up to date on this, he's saying this is all DC. According to the Maine Democratic Party statement on Democratic U.S. Senate nomination process, quote, today, the Maine Democratic Party held a meeting with over 100 state committee members. That would be those from around the state of Maine. To hold a nominating convention to choose a new nominee if there is a vacancy to fill. We will announce the full timeline, details for how the nomination process will move forward, information about how to participate, and requirements for the candidates soon. We will keep the public informed throughout the process. Transparency is of the utmost importance. That thing that Graham Platner says needs to happen as though it's not already there. And then we look forward to coming together and harnessing that energy around our new nominee as we work to defeat Susan Collins in November. It is beyond bizarre while we sit here and watch this 11-minute video from Graham Platner announcing he's suspending his campaign, effectively dropping out, as our political editor at the Daily Signal, Bradley Devlin, clarifies. It is bizarre to watch Democrats struggle to gather a force to defeat the most milquetoast moderate Republican that exists. Seriously, if essentially Susan Collins is unflavored cream of wheat, the candidate. Maine, they could have chosen anybody. Again, and again, that's not a slam. Susan Collins has run this very, 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 very excellently. She has simply stood there and pointed at Graham and allowed him to continue doing the stupid stuff he's done. She said, look, yeah, a lot of these scandals are egregious, but I'm not Maine voters. Yeah, man did this to himself, and then some.
On June 9th. And for that reason, we need to be assured that it is going to be open and democratic as we move forward. Amy and I struggled about getting into this.
I mean, it appears now that Amy is in fact struggling even more so because of your decisions, because of your actions. No woman should ever be put through that. You put her on the national stage to be humiliated. That makes you a piece of human debris. To embarrass, to humiliate one's wife on the national stage because of the decision. Again, I don't think Amy forced you to have all of those affairs or message all of those women or have the past that you had. Mr. Redemption, you made that choice yourself. Choices, plural. Many muchly, plural, in that case.
Last summer, right around this time of year, we sat down and we looked at each other and we said, if we believe in the kind of politics we think that we do, we have to do this. Over the past couple days, really yesterday and today, we have had to have that exact same conversation. We believe that for the movement to continue.
Oh, yes, that's what we need. A "We Believe" yard sign. Oh, goody gumdrops. I was worried that we weren't going to get one of those.
It can't be me. And for that reason, we are suspending campaign operations. This is incredibly difficult because I know that some will think it's an admission of guilt, and it most certainly is not. We're not doing it because of the allegations, we're doing it because of the structures that are being taken away from us by those in power. And I also feel an immense amount of responsibility to everyone who has worked so hard to get us to where we are.
He's trying to fake the tears and they're just not coming. By the way, this is just the face of a man who's caught. This isn't the face of a man who's remorseful. This isn't the face of a man who is sad and sorry for his actions. This is the face of someone who got their hand caught in the cookie jar. That's what, and the reason that I clearly recognize this is because it's the same face every time. It was Eric Swalwell's face. Here we are yet again. Hilarious, truly. Again, of his own making.
We went toe-to-toe with one of the most entrenched political systems in the history of the world, and we won. We beat them on June 9th in overwhelming numbers. We did it the right way. We built a campaign. We engaged in electoral politics. We motivated people. We banded together. We did it the way that we were told we are supposed to make change.
Oh, now here we go. There's the jaded. We did this the way we're told we're supposed to make change. What kind of a jaded threat is this? Because again, you've said before that if the legal system fails, then you think that a revolution, violent if so, is necessary. Your words. Your words. What? Oh, we've done this way you're supposed. What, you're going to rally Maine to have itself a little whiskey rebellion or something?
And we won. And now they are not going to let us have it. Not if it's me. And so we're suspending campaign operations. I want to make clear, though, I intend to file my paperwork to withdraw. The process needs to assure that what comes next is reflective of the Mainers who on June 9th turned out and showed that they are desperate for a different kind of politics.
Okay, so this is interesting. So he's like, I'm suspending campaign operations, and I intend to file my paperwork to withdraw. So he's trying to have it both ways. I'm dropping out, but I'm not dropping out. I plan to drop out. I'm not dropping out quite yet. I'm just suspending campaign operations. So Bradley Devlin, who I'm kind of chatting with throughout this, says, look, it's still a sign that he wants to use leverage to get the system that he wants. I very much agree with that. We'll have to kind of see where it is that he's going with this. Again, still suspect effectively, the man's dropping out. I don't know of anyone who's suspended a campaign and then magically Hesto Presto'd it back to life.
It needs to be driven not from back rooms, but by the will of the people.
You've said this, dude.
And the decisions that come next must come from that.
Uh-huh.
All we were asking for was health care.
Oh, there it is. Oh, man, it was just the only controversial thing was that I just wanted to give everybody health care. This is what we always hear. I just wanted to give you free stuff. I just want to give you all the free things in the whole wide world. Your actions. The idea is, though, if someone is like, I'm going to give you an ice cream bar, but also I'm going to kill lots of puppies. But I just wanted to give you ice cream. Piss off with this.
It's to end the genocide.
Oh, yeah, End a genocide, says the man who went to work for Blackwater.
To use our taxpayer dollars at home to uplift our communities instead of waging war overseas.
Says the former Merc. Okay, yeah.
We were asking for a fair system. We were asking for an end to the corruption.
I mean, the kind of corruption where you lie about your oyster business in order to seem more appealing to Maine voters so that you seem like a worker of the people instead of the fraud that you are? That kind of corruption there, buddy?
The end to the money in politics. We were asking for real democracy, and we did it the right way, and we won.
Sure. The right way. Did it the right way, did you?
But now the ball is in the court of the Democratic establishment.
Yes. Famed Democratic establishment, Zoran Mamdani, Bernie Sanders, and Hassan Piker. The most establishmenty that there could ever be. Yes. Survey says...
My name might be on the ballot right now, but that ballot line belongs to the people of Maine.
That is the gayest way you could have summed it up. Pride Month, sir, was over 8 days ago. My name may not, or may be on the ballot, or may not be on the ballot, but the ballot, the name in the ballot, the line, the dotted line on the ballot in the Word document belongs to the people of Maine. Mainly the Maine in plain, which fell on the rain in Spain.
And on November 3rd, it needs to belong to the people of Maine. And the next Democratic senator for Maine needs to belong to the people of Maine. They need to reflect the will and the values of the people of this state.
Dude on a Harley in the background doesn't give a crap about what you have to say here. I will remind all the boys, girls, and squirrels that previously, Maine voters have chosen to elect Angus King and have chosen to elect Susan Collins. Whether you do or you don't agree with it, whether you like it or dislike it, the people of Maine decided. If more people in Maine came out to vote and voted the other way, it would have turned out differently.
I love this state. I love Maine, and I love Mainers in ways that I can't really describe.
Given your statements, I don't think you need to go into any detail about ways that you love people in Maine that we can't describe. I think I will pass on how you choose to love the people of Maine.
I'm immensely proud of what we have built.
And now the fifth time.
And I have the utmost faith that we will continue to build. and we will continue to move towards a better future.
Verbs, to continue to move and to build and to generate. It's essentially, this is the opposite of whenever Politico reports about Republicans. You know, conservatives pounce, seize, target, observe. We're going to build, grow, shape, all of the SimCity 4 adjectives and verbs that I can think of while zoning a new residential district.
From the bottom of my heart, thank you. Thank all of you. And keep fighting. We're gonna win someday.
Okay, that was Graham Platner announcing suspending his campaign and his intent to drop out of the race. Real special. Thank you very much there, buddy. That's just real super duper. Thanks for sharing. Just a real kind of moment there. Last little update here before we end the show for the evening. Iran has started retaliatory strikes, and they are now also targeting Kuwait and Bahrain. So the Kuwaiti army has announced that Kuwaiti air defenses are now working to mitigate the threat of Iranian air threats. People are being urged to seek shelter. A couple of other ending details here. Kharg Island does appear to be on fire. There was an earlier report that we didn't air because it couldn't be confirmed, that Kharg Island was going to be invaded this evening. There is no evidence at the present time, 8:51 p.m. Eastern, on July the 8th, that that's underway. Iranian regime members and military officials are saying, quote, all bases that served as a source of the attack in the southern part of the country or that provided support for such attacks will be targeted without exception by heavy fire from missiles and drones. Of course, that's hilarious because I wasn't exactly aware there were ever any exceptions on targeting bases to begin with. Just really crappy aim and crappier missiles and drones. So we'll keep you guys up to date if there's anything else on that. Anything, again, in this instance, metastasizes into something a little bit more exciting in the Middle East. Just a series of drone and missile attacks being shot down in Kuwait and Bahrain. More of the Strait of Hormuz coastline. Near the JAM, the Qeshm area of the Strait of Hormuz appears to be where these missiles are from. Alerts to cell phones are being sent in the area. If for some reason you're tuning into the show from the... Qatar's also sending everyone inside. If you're in Bahrain, in the UAE, or you are in Kuwait and you're watching this show, well, first of all, salam. Number two, God be with you. And the grace of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Please take shelter and do not go outdoors for photos. If you do have any photos or videos, please send those over to contact@tonykinnett.com. Why? Because we'd love to air those over here on the show and share, again, what it is that you guys are experiencing over in that Gulf region. Those things all said, again, we've broadcasted for longer than I planned to, but we also weren't planning on seeing Graham Platner suspending operations this evening. Thank you very much for tuning in. We will be back tomorrow with more updates. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.